I'm down here. I inhale as I swing back. So the easiest way that I can think of explaining this hip hinge is with what I like to call, well, it's my favorite coaching cue ever, but it's the toilet metaphor. So say you're staying at a friend's place, you've never been to their house before, you got to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And you don't know where the light switch is, so you get into the bathroom, you like kick around for a while, you finally find like, okay, here's the toilet. And for whatever reason, you don't know if like the seat's up or down, you don't have enough time, but you don't want to get like covered in water, right? So no one's ever going to just go in and and hope for the best, right? You go in and you're like, okay, you feel porcelain, you're good, you can relax. If you don't, you start like hovering over some moisture, you stand up really quick, right? That's a kettlebell swing. All it is just reaching for a toilet in the dark and then finding out the seat's up, so you got to stand up real quick. Otherwise the alligators get you. So
you're listening to another episode of Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, here with our guest Matt Hoff. We are missing the others today, which is perfectly fine because I don't like them anyway. Matt, I'm going to let you talk about yourself a little bit. You're actually here this weekend to do a kettlebell seminar at Faction, where you're going to teach people how to be masters of the kettlebell. So give us a little background on your CV, if you will.
All right, so my name's Matt Hoff. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. I'm a coach at CrossFit Inception / CrossFit Sacrifice. 2 boxes, same people, 1 city, that whole deal. RKC certified, whole bunch of other CrossFit certifications and Star and Strength, all of that other stuff. In town to do this kettlebell workshop, and I got a blog at paleonow.com. So it's not really all paleo stuff, just kind of whatever I feel like writing about. So it gets off topic like 9 times out of 10.
Gotcha. And you're RKC certified, and that's the Russian...
It's the Russian Kettlebell Challenge through Dragon Door. So when they, kettlebells were kind of unheard of until about like 15 years ago in America. And Pavel Tsatsouline brought them over here. And he wound up linking up with John Duquesne. And they set up this company to start trying to do these kettlebell workshops and seminars. Started off really small in California, and then Men's Health picked it up. And then since then, CrossFit has picked it up, and now it's, you see kettlebells in your Globo gyms everywhere. Most people know what they are. Not how to use them, but they know what they are.
Yeah, usually when it comes to anything like anything in a CrossFit, there's more to it than people assume. So what I find is like people are like, oh, weightlifting, you just throw the weight over your head.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a little more to it than just that. And I think a lot of times people will think that what they know a lot about is special. They'll go, like for me, I'm like, oh, weightlifting's special, but the other stuff's not as special. But anytime you start learning about like a skill set like kettlebells, you're like, oh, wait, it's way more detailed, and there's way more to know than I ever thought before.
Yeah, and, coming through primarily like a CrossFit background, self-taught. Like I started really CrossFitting when I was in Iraq, so it's not like I had like, oh, I can just go across town to this gym and check it out or do my fundamentals. Right. So I kind of tried to teach myself everything versus, just off of like watching videos, which sort of explains like some of my disastrous weightlifting technique. But when I got back from deployment, my first thing was like, I'm going to get smart before I get broken. And the first seminar that came through was Jeff Martone's CrossFit Kettlebell. Signed up for that, and then since then I've just done a lot of like continuing education with it. And like most CrossFitters, they only know the American swing and then the super strict bottoms up kettlebell swing with like Jenny Orr standards from regionals last year. It's like the only 2 varieties, but they're going to put a kettlebell all over like all their t-shirts. I'm like, well, there's like a lot more you can do. Not saying that kettlebells are like the end all be all of conditioning, but you can do more than just swing it.
Yeah, they're a fantastic tool. What so give us some examples of some things that you can mix into your CrossFit training, because I know that I've been CrossFitting for 5 years now, and there's a lot of variety within CrossFit, but once you've been doing it for 5 years, it's only so interesting. So what are some things that I can do with kettlebells that might be different in my workouts other than just swinging them, or different types of swings?
Well, when you think about, Dan John, who's not a CrossFit guy too, but he's more into the RKC community, he breaks down movements into like 5 basic patterns. So you got squat, hinge, like hinge being like a deadlift or kettlebell swing, anything like that. Weighted carries, and then upper body push and pull. And you can use a kettlebell either as a substitute or as a completely different exercise for pretty much any of those. So you go through with, weighted carries. The big thing you see in CrossFit nowadays are people who are doing like yoke walks, different strongman things, or pushing prowlers. Well, if you don't have access to all that, every gym pretty much has a kettlebell. You can carry that farmer's walk style from a rack, overhead, do a lot of similar stuff. You don't get the same loading, but
Right.
you can replicate a lot of those movements and a lot of that, human locomotion. For squats, great for, goblet squat, holding onto it by both of the horns, sort of more like a front squat, but it also has like an isometric hold aspect to it. Put 2 kettlebells in the rack, do a front squat like that, and that's
Actually, the goblet squat, I really like that for beginners.
yeah.
People who have a hard time getting back on their heels. You throw give them the goblet squat, and a lot of the problems that are happening with the air squat, if they're having a hard time with it, just go away.
Yeah,
and then they figure out how it's supposed to feel, and they can apply it back to the air squat.
It's nice to have that weight that kind of pulls them forward. Like people are used to seeing it with pistol progressions. I think Doug was talking about that in one of his technique WOD videos. You hold a plate out there, have something that's kind of counterbalance. So guys who have a hard time settling on their heels, just like don't really like know how to move in that motion, putting a weight out in front of them is going to help them get that, like correct their mechanics.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you ever tried doing like a overhead squat with a kettlebell, but that's gnarly.
I think like one time, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, you're like this is hard. I like doing hard things, but only hard things that I'm good at.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about the different types of movements you can do with kettlebells. So goblet squats.
Yeah. There's a wall ball substitute for kettlebells, which is kind of like a swing into a thruster where you like throw the kettlebell at the top. That was pretty.
You kind of
popular.
flip it over, catch it.
Yeah.
And do your thruster.
Yeah, that's usually pretty popular at the workshops. So you can do like kettlebell Karen, which like I hate wall balls. I would rather like get punched in the face and do a wall ball because I'm 5'4". It's terrible movement. It's a discriminatory movement against midgets like myself.
Wall balls and rowing.
Yeah. Well, rowing, don't even get me started on that. But yeah, so you do the kettlebell, you do the wall ball substitute for that. And that's, easy if you're going on a place you don't have a wall ball with you. Usually you can throw a kettlebell in the back of your car. Trying to think what else. You can do kettlebell thrusters as like a kettlebell Fran. Do it with two 1.5 pound kettlebells.
That's a lot tougher.
That's so much
That gets
worse.
tough real fast.
Yeah. And then, you can do the different like Olympic lift variants. There's kettlebell snatch and kettlebell cleans. But most of those are basically a swing, so it's more in that hinge category.
Right.
But you can do them from a dead stop, turn it into like an explosive like bilateral pull or unilateral pull, and then catch it in like that overhead position. And that's a pretty gnarly movement. Do the same thing with a clean with 1 or 2 kettlebells, and that's all your different squat variations. You could throw it on, somehow flip it over and hold it behind you if you wanted to replicate a back squat, but it'd be like 72 pounds at most. So that'd just be kind of ridiculous.
Right. I mean, that's really cool stuff for if you're traveling, and you can. I mean, if you're not flying,
Yeah.
then if you're driving kettlebells, you can bring how big you want. Obviously, if you're flying, you might want to limit the size of your kettlebell.
Yeah.
Or maybe ship it ahead or whatever. But I mean, I get stuck in places all the time where I could just bring a kettlebell and not always. A lot of time to find a gym and make sure the hours fit my schedule and all that kind of stuff. So, and I am one of those people that get stuck in like kettlebell swing. All I do is swing and snatch, and I do Turkish get-ups. But I'm really quick to forget all the other stuff I could be doing too.
Yeah, and everybody's always trying to have this like big push towards like more variance in CrossFit. Like you see like use of specialty bars growing. You see strongman implements, all this stuff. And, all these gyms are going out of their way to spend all this money on everything. Well, you have all these kettlebells that you're using once every 2 weeks to do Helen. Why don't you try, make it kettlebell Grace instead of normal Grace. Make it kettlebell Karen instead of normal Karen. And that's your variance right there. That's your
absolutely.
different loading. That's, adding variety, adding instability, making it a unilateral versus bilateral work, which is another pretty big complaint about how CrossFit's usually programmed. People are always using
It's very
2 arms,
bilateral.
2 legs. Yeah. And that's the get up is kind of a hard one to put in one of those categories because it involves pretty much every movement pattern that you could have. But I mean, you're getting plenty of like lunge work, split squat work with that stuff. So,
And
yeah.
I heard you say before you don't like Turkish get-ups in Metcons and fast-paced workouts.
Yeah, I think you look at a Turkish get-up, and it's really kind of like a slow grind workout. It's putting your body into some pretty challenging positions. Not saying that putting your body into challenging positions under stress and intensity is bad. Like it's good. But until you have like a set base, I think there's other ways you can do get-ups to try to mimic that same thing without having to worry about someone losing the kettlebell behind them and tearing their shoulder out of socket.
Right.
Not that I've ever seen that, but you can see how
There's definitely
that
some
can go bad.
unhealthy things going on when people are doing Turkish get-ups under fatigue for time,
Yeah,
I start seeing stuff, I'm like, that they're putting their knees in weird positions.
Yeah.
They're putting their shoulders in not great positions. They're sitting straight up instead of, turning to the side.
Right, and it's never really a lightweight. So you put once you make something for a time, that 20% slop is going to come in, and yeah, I can tolerate 20% slop with like people rounding their backs in an air squat and
Right.
maybe shortening their lunge or something like that with like putting their neck out of position in a pull up, but with a weight in like held over their shoulder like that in just a weird position, I would stay away from that. You can move it down, hold the load on your chest, put it on your shoulders like a sandbag, do a get up that way. You're still going through the same range of motion.
Yeah, your last seminar was the first time I'd ever even done a sandbag get-up.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was great.
There's a lot of, you go to like the more specialized varieties of CrossFit, like a couple guys that do it, in order to get better at alpine skiing. So they'll do workouts where they do X amount of get-ups with their skis on. Or you get like, which it's kind of funny to watch in a video, but if you're a wilderness skier or something like that, that's like really functional. For military, I'm a captain in the Army. I work at Ranger School. Like once you get beaten down like that, getting up and putting on your rucksack when it weighs like 120 pounds and you're, a stocky 150 like I am, becomes like. It becomes a significant challenge. So doing that under duress for time and workout,
Right.
that has like a significant carryover. And you're doing the same thing. It's actually loaded a little heavier. There's still a technique component to it, but I don't have to worry about, tearing my labrum or something like that.
Right. And you talked a little bit about unilateral versus bilateral. And I know that if you look at any good strength program out there, it's going to have a fair amount of unilateral stuff worked in, just to make sure that, asymmetry is one of those things that lead to injury. So if you're doing nothing but bilateral stuff, then there's that opportunity to build asymmetry. If you ever competed in a sport ever, you already have some asymmetry. And then you doing only bilateral work doesn't help that out.
Yeah.
So how does, give me some examples of tell me why unilateral work is good, and then some.
I mean, if you think about it, like you look at life and sports and, functional jobs that involve doing, like military, law enforcement, firefighters, a lot of what you're doing, you're always coming off of, you're doing one hand. You throw a punch with one arm, not like two fists at the same time, unless you're in like a video game. So getting to the point where you can use your body with rotation, not just trying to counteract rotation, but like with rotation, using just one arm at a time, doing things where it's not, I can have a weak side and a strong side. I'll compensate for it. Actually starts becoming like pretty beneficial. It's a normal human movement pattern. You walk unilaterally. You're not like sitting there like bunny hopping everywhere. So getting strong in those ways, that's how you run. That's how you do everything. And if it's good for your lower body, what are you really doing for your upper body in that same vein? You look how your gym's programming, and not to criticize any one box in particular, but when's the last time you did something with just one arm? And probably not ever, if not for months.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Not to toot my own
We're
horn.
brilliant here, though.
Yeah.
We're practically geniuses when it comes to programming.
Yeah, but smarter than your average box. But you look at, I guess you could go to like.
No, if you look at CrossFit.com,
Yeah.
You don't even get kettlebell snatches hardly
No.
ever. I mean, it's once in a blue, or Turkish get-ups.
And I mean, back to the, Turkish get-ups, it's like it's a high skill thing. It's hard to coach. So, and it's not like hot, sexy, and fast like butterfly pull-ups or 75-pound snatches for 30 reps. It's not going to be one of those things that draws your members in. Because if it did, they'd probably be doing like yoga instead. But
Right.
you still have to do those correctives. You still have to do things to make sure that when you put somebody in a challenging position, you can see where that slack in their movement efficiency is, like where they're weak and where they're sucking.
Yeah. Like, I think very, very close, like the last day of instruction of our fundamentals course, we throw in Turkish get-ups. And it's almost as if, like, I almost want to pull it out because it like beats them down. Like,
Yeah.
It's not the sexy movement. Like, people want the fast paced.
It's demoralizing. Like I usually only do them as part of like my warm-ups, and I use it more as like almost like a mobility thing where I'm like, are my hips warm? Are my shoulders warm? Well, if I do a get-up, then, I've pretty much put my body in every position I can put it in under some sort of load and intensity, not going super fast or super heavy, just like a 1 or 2 pound kettlebell, but it's enough to make me know that like at the end of this, I'm fully ready to do whatever workout I have to do.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, next time you go do anything overhead, so like presses or especially something like jerks, do a good bit of Turkish get-ups to warm up, and then go to the barbell and do your jerks or whatever, and you will notice a difference. You'll feel tighter. Warming up is specific to what you're doing, and Turkish get-ups, I mean, I use them almost every day in my warm-ups, and because almost every day I'm doing something with my upper body.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to hold something overhead and then move through a pretty big range of motion with my shoulder.
Well, the other thing is like, so a little story about me and overhead squats. Like that's like I'd rather do wall balls than overhead squats. Like that's like, I just had terrible shoulder range of motion. The first time I tried to do Nancy was 2 Octobers ago. Like I had just joined the gym, couldn't do a single overhead squat at 95 pounds. Wound up scaling all the way down to an ultralight 15-pound bar by the end of it. And I was like, I was in decent enough shape, like body weight and running workouts. I was like close to the top of the leaderboard almost every day. And that was just embarrassing. But overhead squats in the course, Turkish get-ups over about 3-month period of time got me enough, not only just range of motion, but strength in that range of motion. Because there's a difference between being flexible and being strong in a position. That I was able, I was able to RX Nancy for the first time. Like, so a lot of guys who struggle with shoulder range of motion, that's like such a critical movement for you because you're going through so many parts and you have to be strong on all those different angles.
Yeah. A lot of coaches will have, like, if someone comes back from a shoulder injury, they'll throw Turkish get-ups as kind of like the last step before you go back into like normal programming. So if it's good enough for people who are injured, it's probably good enough for people who, before they're injured, to keep them from being injured.
Yeah.
So super useful tool. May not be so good for like super fast paced. Not with 2 pood for time. Doing it for time may not be the best thing, but doing in your warm up, cool down, that could be super beneficial.
Yeah, some like midline stabilization work at the end. Like it's great for your core, great for your hips because your hips are going through just as much of a different range of motion. There's a lot of lateral hip shifting in addition to just like the lunging. So people with like bad hips, it's recommended for. All sorts of stuff. And, there's 50 different ways to do a Turkish get-up or one where you're just holding a kettlebell overhead. There's a tactical Turkish get-up that's a little bit quicker. So, I mean, I cover all the varieties. Well, not all, but the varieties that I know of in my workshop. And it's, 100 different ways to skin a cat, but each one of them is going to have a different little stimulus for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's not just one right way to squat.
Yeah.
So sometimes I talk to people who've been CrossFitting, like at another gym or something, like, oh, you're not supposed to squat like that. I'm like, well, there's like 10 different ways to squat.
Yeah.
There's an Olympic squat. Like, you want your knees to go forward. So.
Yeah, and you have to start explaining like all the different variables. Like the one that the CrossFit teaches is the tactical Turkish getup that Jeff Martone does, and that has a lot more practical carryover to like, oh, I'm on my back. I need to be not on my back so I can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But like the RKC does the high bridge, which is kind of the variety I prefer.
That's the one I like to.
Yeah,
I prefer also. Yeah.
It's a little bit more range of motion, but like are you going to take an extra 2 seconds every rep under time to get your hips up and your butt squeezed at a certain point? Like, no, that's ridiculous. But if I was ever going to have to do them in a competition, it's nice to have it the other way in my kit bag. But for prehab, rehab, and warm up, I like doing the high bridge.
So to all you people who always like to ask me, like I get emails and questions in the gym, people go, which one is the best? Like they'll do that with like squats or this or that. They're like, which version is the best? It's like the answer is always it depends.
Yeah.
And they get mad because I'm like, oh, what is your goal? Like if your goal is like the tactical application like you're talking about, then obviously doing the Martone way might be the better way. But if like you're doing it for shoulder, prehab, rehab, and just general shoulder health warm up, it's probably better to go RKC route.
Yeah, and it's that's the whole Rob Wolf quote, like who are you and what are you trying to do? Like
right.
It just depends.
Trying to be the best at everything all the time.
You're like, oh, duh. Then do all of them all the time. And do the whole Rich Froning 75 workouts a day.
I am pretty much convinced that Rich Froning is lying. No, I think he does train a lot, but I think
he put on a game face for that video.
Doug and I are talking about. We were all talking about it here. Is like, I think Rich Froning and Dan Bailey. Like, I think they just come up with this shit to say. They're like, we're gonna tell the world that we eat pizza the night before we compete, and they're really not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. They might be, but I mean, I could just as well see them planning this out. I was like, well, when we get interviewed, this is what we're going to say. We had pizza on Friday night. So we'll just like screw with everybody. You know what I mean? And they're, they go home and they laugh about it. They're like, that was pretty funny how everyone thinks we're eating pizza the night before we compete.
Yeah, and they don't have like that personality of like the jokester either. So everyone would fall for it. Like, oh, pizza the night before you compete? Carbo load? Perfect. I'll do that. And
they may be like web celebrities or whatever, but we still don't know a lot about them. So it's not like the typical celebrity you see in Hollywood where like they're constantly being talked about their personal life.
Where there's like the paparazzi that's like,
right.
It's okay. Maybe if I get out of the army, I'll like hide in Richard's dumpster and like actually film what he's doing.
But with CrossFit, people are only interested in like what are they doing for training? What do they eat? What do they train? How do they sleep? That's all they care about. So, like, if you start getting into their personal lives, I think a lot of CrossFitters will just be like, I'm not sure there's a market for that.
Well, let's be honest. Like, CrossFitters are generally not, like, the world's most exciting or interesting people. We're all, like, in bed by 9:30 when we're in our 20s. Like,
yeah.
There's really not a lot of opportunity for us to get in trouble.
Like, how can I get 9 hours of sleep? You want to go out tonight? I got to train tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, you're like, oh man, I only got 8 hours of sleep last night. I need another 9.5. I'm bitter about sleep because I'm chronically sleep deprived for work. So it's a sore subject with me.
Awesome. Let's take a break.
Welcome back to Technique Quad. In our last video, we worked on Turkish get-ups. We went over the way that I have traditionally done them. Matt, who knows a whole lot more about kettlebells than I do, has his own thoughts on the matter, so he's going to talk about some of the things that he does in his method that I don't do in mine, that I actually didn't know about until just the other day, and I like a whole lot more. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
All right, guys, thanks for having me. I always like to start from the bottom. Like we said in the videos yesterday, there's a lot of ways you can do a get-up, but there's no wrong way, so long as you're keeping good mechanics. So I'll start from the bottom. It's important to go onto your side and use your own body momentum to take the kettlebell over. So you kind of get into this fetal position and rotate the bell onto your back. Get in that press stance that you're going to have with your same side leg pulled in and your opposite side leg out. Chest flat back flat on the ground. Press that load overhead and get your arm out at a 45-degree angle. Where I differ from Doug is that he likes to kick his leg up to give him some momentum. I find that really difficult to do with a maximal load. So I'm going to keep my chest tight. I'm going to imagine there's a fish hook that's attached to my sternum, and I'm going to crease at the hips instead of sitting up, and drive my leg into the ground as I sit up to that first position. From here, I'll go into my high sit on my hand. Just like Doug did, I'll bridge up. But what you notice right here is that there's a straight line from that kettlebell into my hand supporting the load. So if someone was to come here and push down on me, it's a solid vertical line. a lot of times you'll see people doing a low sweep that are going to skip this step, and they're not going to have that good support for that weight overhead. Sweep my leg through into that kneeling position. From here, you'll notice that everything is still resting right on this arm. A lot of times you'll see people just try to sit up like this, doing some sort of kind of oblique exercise. For me, I find it a lot more efficient to go back on my haunches, sit back a little bit so I can support that weight, and then come up into that standing position.
Can you do it one more time?
Better. So,
From a better angle.
instead of from here, just sitting up, where I have to stabilize the load a lot more difficultly and use my smaller muscles to move the weight, I'm going to come from here, load's nice and stable, sit back, and then sit up with my hips. From there, rotate the back knee, stand up, and then take it back down. So 3 little differences. I like to drive my heel into the ground, feel that gives me more stability to lift more weight. From here, I'll kick my back leg in, lets me sit on my haunches. Or from here, bring it back into my back heel, and then stand up with it. All the time I'm thinking about where's the best place for my bones to hold the load and make my muscles do as little work as possible.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Okay, we're back here with Matt Hoff, and we took a little bit of a break because I couldn't think, and I needed coffee and a pee. Anyways, so we've noticed that there's quite a few people that listen out of Seattle, and I want you guys, if you could, you can go on our website, fitter.tv, FITR.tv, and could you drop us a line and tell us where the best place to train in Seattle is? I want to know what the best gym is there. Doug, who's not here, he's actually from Washington, so I think he'd be interested to know. He's got to send his mom somewhere, I think. But so Seattle people, Seattle. Get on there. And now we're going to move on back over to Matt, and we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. We actually just went to breakfast before we did this podcast. He flew in last night at 7:45.
Yeah, landed at 8.
So
before.
You were up for 48 hours leading up to that?
Yeah, pretty much. I had to do a 24-hour work shift, so you wake up before that so you can train before, which is counterintuitive to doing anything productive with your life. I'm going to wake up early so I can stay awake all day so I can train before my shift.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is stupid when you say it out loud, but I do it anyways.
We went to breakfast. I woke you up this morning, or I think I woke you up.
Yeah, you definitely woke me up.
And I called him on the phone. That's how I woke him up. We weren't in the same room. And it sounds weird. But
well, I mean, it's not weird if you say that we had bunk beds.
Yeah, the bunk beds helped out for sure. I called you from the top bunk. And we went to the best breakfast place in town, which is Brother Juniper's. If you're in Memphis, go to Brother Juniper's. It is delicious.
Fact.
Yes. And we actually had a really good conversation about nutrition while we were there. And you actually do some nutrition seminars and stuff like that too. You're a nutrition nerd.
Yeah, full-blown nutrition nerd. The blog started originally as being for the nutrition outlet for the gym. It came up a lot with the new members, or even some old members asking about how do I do this whole paleo thing, and then just sort of morphed into kettlebells and mobility and all the other stuff that I did. But the nutrition stuff, it's just so constantly evolving, and just so many different things that keep going on with it that it keeps it interesting.
And we were talking about vegetarians, touch on that a little bit. People who really they think that eating vegetarian is just healthier.
Yeah, and there's some people who do it for moral, ethical reasons, and that's a whole different can of worms. But I think if you look at anybody who's been vegetarian for a while and then gone away from it and see it's a visual change that you can see just in their health, and then performance, everything else just keeps improving so much. We have a couple vegetarians who were just completely stuck on plateaus, started adding meat back to their diets, and then just did amazing. And you see this at professional sports levels, which is rare that we get to mention that with just kind of like CrossFit's still kind of an underground thing, but you saw it with Tony Gonzalez and you saw it with Frank Mir, where both of them spent a period of time vegetarian, and then it was almost career ending for them, and then they came back a lot stronger and better than they had been in years.
Yeah, and you were telling me that you actually converted.
Yeah,
a few vegetarians.
I'm 3 for 3, no big deal. Yeah, and most of them were vegetarians for health reasons, and I think it's just what you see growing up. It's like kind of how the media brainwashes you for it. Like there's even phone commercials that are like, oh, it looks like veganism's really working out for this girl, but then you see those people in real life, they never, it's not as seen on TV. They have like thin hair, just kind of sunken looking cheeks and everything like that. Just real bad skinny fat syndrome, as I like to call it.
Yeah. I like to tell people just at least give whatever it is a shot for 30 days.
Yeah, I mean 30 days of doing pretty much anything is not gonna kill you. So if I'm completely wrong and all these other people who are in cahoots with me are wrong, well then you just had 30 days of eating bacon and hamburgers. But
without the bun.
Yeah, without the bun. Lettuce wrapped. Most places will do it for you. But if if it turns out to be right, you're gonna know the difference, and it's not like I make any money off of you doing it one way or the other.
Have you ever thought about doing a 30-day vegetarian challenge?
Absolutely not. Like I grew up as like an Italian kid. I think I had pasta as like my main source of food for like every night for the first until I joined the Army, like 18 years of my life. So you look at that and I was like a low meat consumption, and then you also look at me and I was like 115 pounds and 5'4", and then now I'm like, unfortunately eating meat hasn't helped me like get taller, but I'm like 50 pounds heavier and lower body fat percentage. So not saying that those are the only two factors, but clearly it's like I'm a lot healthier now than I was before, like almost adult sized.
Almost adult sized.
Almost adult sized.
Yeah, I was telling you, I actually converted one vegetarian myself, and part of hers was ethical reasons, and I pointed her towards the vegetarian myth, which I haven't read, but I've picked through before, and I understand there's if ethical reasons is like your main reason, then it might not be the best choice, especially if you're eating grains, which you pretty much have to.
Yeah.
If you cut your calories by just eating just vegetables, like you'll die. Like you can't live on vegetables alone.
Yeah, I mean, like right now I'm signed up for one of those community share agricultures, and it's this big box of vegetables I get every week. And I have a roommate he's like about 210-pound dude, and the two of us struggle to finish that many vegetables in a week. But it's not like at the end of eating all of it you feel like full and satiated. It's just not that much going on in a vegetable. Like there's a lot that's missing from it in terms of proteins, branched chain amino acids, fats.
It's just not very dense in calories.
Yeah.
Like where you're going to get all your energy. And
yeah.
You obviously have to go towards grains. I've actually seen like some vegetarians on a blog saying, or on a forum or something saying like that vegetarianism is actually closer to primal than what primal's being. But I'm thinking, well, if we didn't have grains in that primal time, then
yeah,
you're actually making an argument that we lived off vegetation only.
There's a group of people that are like raw fruit vegans, the 30 bananas a day guy and all that stuff. And you're like,
Steve Jobs was a fruitarian for a good part of his life. Look what happened to him.
Yeah, I was about to say that turned out well for him.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean they're eating all of their calories off of like sweet tropical fruits. And you're like, yeah, we have definitely evolved from species who did that, but that's the reason like why humans were able to build cities, and those things are still like using a stick to eat ants, which makes them not vegetarian in the first place. So
well, the fruit of today is different than the fruit of 100 years ago, though.
Yeah,
it wasn't as sweet and as dense.
I mean, it's been selectively bred. It's evolution works for the business economic side of everything just the same as it does. Like the plants that people want to grow and people want to eat, those are going to be the banana trees that get selected to survive.
Yeah. And we touched on a little bit with nervous system development, brain development in regard to fats and omega-3s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's been like some really strong correlation between like omega-3s and vitamin D, I think, or vitamin E, and your neural tube growth. So that's like, for people who are having kids or trying to do like a high CNS sport, like weightlifting, CrossFit, things like that.
Anything that involves moving.
Yeah. Being able to, regenerate your CNS capacity, like that's huge right there.
All right. Well, sounds good. I think we're going to be done here.
All right.
Unless you got anything else you want to talk about.
Well, I'd like to admonish the people of Columbus, Georgia. There's only 5 of us that have downloaded the Barbell Shrugged podcast.
Oh.
It's not a big town, but there's certainly more than 5 people. So
We
you guys need
know.
to get on that.
We can look at the stats and know where. Well, in their defense, there might be more than 5 because there's a good portion that is unknown.
Oh.
So I'd say about
Yeah.
half of our stats are like in the dark, and the other half can tell me like what town you live in.
So people from 6 through ? I apologize.
So there might be. Well, what I'm thinking is there might be twice.
Up to
Might be.
12.
There might be up to 10 people.
That still leaves about like a couple thousand that need some scolding.
For sure. So download it.
Yeah.
But if you're already listening to it, you already downloaded it. So
It's a moot point, but you should make your friends do it.
yeah, preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Spread the word. All right, guys. See you next time.